All right, let's get into it. Today, we're talking about a story that honestly feels like something straight out of a movie. It's about this one discovery that's making us, completely tear up a huge chapter in the history books and just start over.
So let me ask you something. If I said, where did the Iron Age begin? What would you say? Where would you point on a map? For like forever, there's been one simple, accepted answer.
Yep, that answer was always Anatolia, what we call modern-day Turkey. I mean, it's in all the textbooks, the documentaries you watch, the museums you visit. They all tell the exact same story, that this was the spot. Ground zero for one of the biggest tech upgrades in human history.
Okay, so before we get to the part that changes everything, let's just quickly go over that official story. The one we've all been told for decades.
So what are we even talking about here? The Iron Age, it's not just about a new type of metal. No way. This shift from bronze, which is kind of brittle, to super tough iron, it changed everything. Think about it. You get stronger plows, which means you can farm more land. You get deadlier weapons for armies. And you get way more durable tools to build bigger and better cities. It was a complete operating system upgrade for civilization.
And the timeline for this was always super simple. The story goes like this. Iron smelting gets invented in Anatolia, right around 1300 BCE. Then, just like a ripple in a pond, that know-how slowly spreads out over hundreds of years. One single origin point. It's a neat and tidy story. And, well, as we're about to find out, it's probably wrong.
Okay, and this is where the whole thing gets turned on its head. Because sometimes, history isn't just a quiet whisper. Sometimes it just screams right out of the ground at you and you have no choice but to listen.
So picture this. Way down in the south of India, in Tamil Nadu, you've got these archaeologists digging at a site called Sivagale. They're just doing their thing, expecting to find stuff that fits perfectly into the timeline we just talked about. But they found something that didn't fit, not even close.
Yeah, they found something that didn't just bend the rules of history. It totally shattered them. What they pulled out of the ground wasn't just another piece of the puzzle. It was a piece that basically told them the entire puzzle they'd been working on was the wrong shape to begin with.
Okay, get ready for this number. When they did the radiocarbon dating on the stuff they found, the date that came back was as early as 3345 BCE. Just let that sink in for a second. That is 2,000 years, a full 2 millennia, before we thought anyone was working with iron in Anatolia. It's just mind-blowing.
And this is the big conclusion the researchers came to, and it's an absolute bombshell. This tech didn't show up on some trade route from the West. No, the evidence is pointing to something way more incredible. Independent invention. It means people in this part of India figured it all out completely on their own.
So you're probably thinking, how can they be so sure about that? Well, let's dig into the actual evidence, because it really does point to a full-blown, homegrown iron revolution.
Look, they didn't just find a couple of rusty nails. They found an entire toolkit for a society that was changing fast. We're talking spades and axes to clear forests, spears and knives for hunting and fighting, even swords. And get this, they found evidence of early ultra-high carbon steel. That's a material that is so strong, so pure, it's almost modern. To be able to make that back then, that's an insanely advanced skill.
But here's the real kicker, the smoking gun. They didn't just find the finished products. They found the factory where they were being made. I'm talking ancient smelting furnaces and piles of iron slag. That's the waste material you get when you smelt ore. And finding that, that's the undeniable proof. They weren't just importing this stuff, they were making it right there.
And to really get why this is such a huge deal, think about it like this. The Bronze Age depended on stuff like copper and tin, which are pretty rare. You had to have these huge, complex trade networks to get them. But iron ore, it's literally everywhere. So figuring out how to smelt iron, it's like giving an ancient village a 3D printer that runs on the local dirt. It just completely changes the game and makes technology accessible to everyone.
So, what did this mean for the people living there? Having this tech so early all on their own, what was the impact? Well, to put it simply, it was transformative.
It set off this incredible chain reaction. Suddenly you have these tough iron axes and tools. With those, you can chop down dense forests that were impossible to clear before. That opens up massive amounts of new farmland. More food means you can support bigger villages, which then grow into towns, which fuels the economy, and boom, you get the beginnings of cities.
And this whole revolution wasn't happening in some kind of bubble. This huge tech leap lines up perfectly with really important cultural moments in India.
like the late Vedic period and those amazing megalithic cultures in the south. You know, the ones who built those giant stone monuments? This discovery gives us a brand new way to understand how those societies were able to do what they did.
All right, let's pull back and look at the big picture. What does this one little dig site in India mean for all of world history? Well, it means we pretty much need a new map of innovation.
I mean, just look at this new timeline. The dates from these Indian sites, Siva Galai and another one called Mailadum Parai, they're not just a little bit earlier. We're talking thousands of years earlier than Anatolia, the place we always thought was the starting line. This just completely flips that old idea of technology spreading from just one place on its head.
So yeah, this changes everything. The story of the Iron Age isn't this simple, linear story anymore. It's way more interesting. It's a story of parallel invention. It's the idea that smart, innovative people in totally different parts of the world could come up with the same brilliant, world-changing idea, all by themselves.
And that just leaves you with this one kind of mind-bending thought, right? If a story as big and basic as the Iron Age could be so wrong for so long, it really makes you wonder, what else do we think we know for sure? What other huge chapters of our own history are just sitting there buried under the dirt, waiting for someone to find them and rewrite everything all over again?